The Galactic Concord delegation arrives at the orbital station, Harmony 1 in Earth's orbit with great ceremony. Their ships glitter with ornamental plating and ceremonial banners, a stark contrast to the functional, utilitarian human vessels. Commander Elena Vasquez, a decorated veteran with a prosthetic left hand from the Mars Colonial War, represents Earth's United Defense Force. During the initial banquet, the Takari ambassador, an insectoid being with jeweled carapace, casually mentions how refreshing it is to see a species that managed spaceflight, despite their obvious limitations. Before Vasquez can respond, proximity alarms blare. 3 warships from the Krevak Dominion, pirates, and raiders from beyond Concord space, decloak and launch boarding pods of the station. The Concord delegates panic, their ceremonial guards freezing in confusion. Vasquez and her 12-person security team immediately take control, deploying portable shield generators and setting up interlocking fields of fire at key junctions. Alpha Team, secure the reactor core. Bravo, escort delegates to emergency shelters. Charlie with me. We're taking the comms hub. Vasquez orders, voice steady despite the chaos. Her neural implant interfaces with the station's security systems, bypassing protocols to deploy emergency bulkheads that isolate the borders into manageable pockets. Lieutenant Santos, her second in command, raises an eyebrow at the illegal system access. Technically, that's a violation of Harmony Treaty subsection 47A. Commander, file a complaint after we survive. Vasquez replies, checking the charge on her pulse rifle. The Krevak breach 3 corridors simultaneously, their hulking reptilian frames dwarfing even the largest Concord species. Their combat exoskeletons bristle with weapons designed for intimidation as much as effectiveness, serrated blades and spiked armor plates covered in kill markings. The lead raider roars something untranslatable, clearly expecting immediate surrender. Instead, they face precisely calculated resistance. Vasquez had positioned her people at choke points where the raiders' size works against them, forcing them to advance in single file. Human marksmen target vulnerable joints in the exoskeletons with modified ammunition, another technical violation of diplomatic protocols, but devastatingly effective. The small prey fights, snarls the Krevak commander through a translator as his front line falls. We're not prey, Vasquez responds coldly, tapping commands into her tactical pad. The station's maintenance drones, reprogrammed on the fly, drop from ceiling access panels behind a Krevak position, latching onto their armor with plasma cutters. The aliens' disciplined advance dissolves into confusion as they fight enemies on multiple fronts. Vasquez uses this moment to lead a 5-person team through maintenance shafts, emerging behind the Krevak commander. Their surprise attack is ruthlessly efficient. Precision fire disables the commander's guards, and Vasquez herself launches a capture net that entangles the leader. Signal the surrender, she orders, pressing her rifle against a seam in the alien's armor where sensors indicate a vital organ cluster. The Krevak commander hisses in fury but complies, broadcasting retreat orders to his remaining forces. As the raiders withdraw to their ships, Vasquez secures her prisoner and accesses his command gauntlet, downloading encryption keys and tactical data. Hours later, after medical teams have treated the wounded of all species, the Concord High Chancellor convenes an emergency session. The circular council chamber, designed to reinforce the Concord's egalitarian principles, now highlights their rigid hierarchy as Vasquez is positioned at a secondary speaking position. While we appreciate the enthusiasm of our human hosts, the Chancellor states through his translator, standard protocols would have advised defensive withdrawal until Concord reinforcements arrived. With respect, Chancellor, Vasquez responds, those protocols would have surrendered this station and everyone aboard to hostiles with a documented history of taking no prisoners. She activates a holographic display from the data she extracted. The Krevak attack wasn't random piracy. Their command logs showed detailed intelligence on the diplomatic mission, down to the personal security codes of several delegates. The Chancellor's facial appendages contract in what humans have learned indicates alarm. You accessed an alien military database without Concord oversight. I accessed intelligence vital to your security while it was available, Vasquez corrects. The encryption will auto-reset within their systems in approximately 12 hours. We need to act on this data before that happens. Acting precipitously is not the Concord way, the Chancellor responds. This information must be authenticated through proper channels, which will require weeks of committee review, Vasquez finishes, by which time the Krevac will have changed their codes and possibly launched additional attacks. They know your procedures as well as you do. The Takari ambassador's mandibles click rapidly. The commander speaks with unwarranted certainty. I speak based on tactical assessment, Vasquez replies. The same assessment that just saved your delegation from capture or worse. The Chancellor rises, signaling an end to discussion. The commander's input is noted. The Intelligence Review Committee will examine this data through appropriate protocols. This session is adjourned. As the delegates file out, Admiral Chen, Earth's senior military representative, approaches Vasquez. That could have gone better, he murmurs. They're not ready to listen, Vasquez replies, watching the departing aliens. Let's hope they learn before it costs them more than a diplomatic embarrassment. Chen studies her expression. You think this was just the beginning. It's not a question, and Vasquez doesn't treat it as one. I know it was, and we need to prepare accordingly. 6 months later, Vasquez stands in Earth's Strategic Command Center, watching holographic displays flare with emergency signals. The Krevac Dominion has launched simultaneous attacks on 17 Concord worlds, their fleets moving with unexpected coordination. Surveillance feeds show Concord defense vessels, beautiful, elegant, and catastrophically vulnerable, being torn apart by Krevac battle cruisers. A particularly disturbing feed from New Arcadia shows civilian evacuation ships being methodically hunted down. They're not just raiding anymore, observes Admiral Chen as they watch the carnage. This is full-scale invasion. Vasquez studies the tactical overlays, her neural implant processing information faster than the room's AI can distribute it. Look at the attack pattern. They're specifically targeting communication hubs and shipyards. This isn't conquest, it's systematic disarmament. Exactly what you predicted in your report, Chen says grimly. The one the Concord Intelligence Committee filed under alarmist human tendencies. The Admiral's comlink chimes. The Takari ambassador is requesting immediate clearance to Strategic Command. Priority Alpha. He's here already, Vasquez asks, surprised. Been in orbit for 3 days. Claimed it was a cultural exchange visit. Chen's expression darkens. Now we know the real reason. The Takari ambassador enters flanked by 2 ceremonial guards whose ornamental armor now looks tragically inadequate. His carapace, once iridescent with status markers, appears dull under the harsh lights of the command center. Admiral Chen, Commander Vasquez, he begins, mandibles clicking rapidly in what humans now recognize as extreme distress. I am authorized to formally request immediate military assistance from Earth. Chen raises an eyebrow. The same assistance we offered 3 months ago, when Commander Vasquez's intelligence assessment predicted this exact attack. The ambassador's compound eyes flicker with color patterns that the translation software struggles to interpret. The Intelligence Committee has revised its assessment of human military analysis capabilities. How diplomatic, Vasquez murmurs. Chen gestures toward a secure conference room. Perhaps we should discuss specifics privately. Inside, the ambassador abandons protocol entirely, his translator struggling to keep pace with his agitated speech. 17 worlds under simultaneous attack. The Concord Defense Fleet is in disarray. Our communication networks compromised. Our response protocols ineffective. The Council requests immediate deployment of any available human vessels to assist in evacuation and defense operations. Vasquez exchanges a look with Chen, who nods almost imperceptibly. Ambassador, she says carefully, exactly what level of human military capability is the Concord expecting? Your orbital patrol vessels, your system defense platforms, anything you can spare, the ambassador replies desperately. We understand your technology is limited compared to Concord standards, but any assistance? I think, Chen interrupts, it's time we clarified a few misconceptions about human military doctrine. He activates a secure terminal. Authorization. Chen, Admiral, UDF Command. Protocol revelation. The room's displays shift, showing real-time footage from a location the ambassador doesn't immediately recognize. Gradually, the scale becomes apparent. A massive construction facility built within the hollowed-out interior of Ceres, largest asteroid in Earth's belt. Within it hangs a vessel unlike anything in the Concord registry. The UDF Thunderchild, Chen explains, first of the Nemesis-class deep space carriers. The ambassador stares uncomprehendingly. This is not a patrol vessel. No, Vasquez agrees. It's a warship, specifically designed for full-spectrum combat operations against technologically superior opponents. The ambassador's translator struggles as he shifts rapidly between dialects. But your species has only achieved interstellar travel within the last 4 decades. The industrial capacity required to build something of this scale. We repurposed our entire asteroid mining infrastructure, Chen explains. Every major colony contributed resources and personnel under the Unified Defense Protocol. When? The ambassador demands. The program began 26 years ago, Vasquez replies. Accelerated significantly after your first diplomatic contact. Before you even met us, the ambassador's color patterns shift to bands of deep blue, profound shock. You were building warships before first contact. Chen smiles thinly. Ambassador, humanity has never encountered a new frontier without preparing for both peace and war. It's a survival trait. The ambassador's gaze returns to the Thunderchild. There's something wrong with its design. The proportions are. It's built for function, not aesthetics, Vasquez explains. Every cubic meter serves a combat purpose. No diplomatic quarters, no ceremonial halls, just weapons, engines, and crew support systems. The ambassador's sensory appendages quiver as the full implications register. The Concord High Council believes Earth might contribute a few dozen support vessels to evacuation efforts. How many? How many of these warships do you actually have? Chen and Vasquez exchange another look before she answers. The Thunderchild represents our first production run. 7 vessels fully operational, 5 more completing final trials. The ambassador staggers slightly, his guards moving to support him. 12. You've built 12 capital ships in secret. Not in secret, Chen corrects. In preparation. There's a difference. I must inform the council immediately, the ambassador says, struggling to regain composure. Of course, Chen agrees. But first, perhaps Commander Vasquez should brief you on our proposed response plan. After all, your people are dying while we talk. The bard hits home. The ambassador turns to Vasquez, his translator conveying a previously unheard tone. Humility. What do you propose, Commander? Vasquez activates her tactical display. The Krevak believe they're facing a collection of ceremonial fleets with rigid command structures. They don't know what's coming for them. Her smile is as cold as the vacuum between stars. Let's keep it that way until it's too late for them to run. The Concord Military Oversight Committee arrives at Jupiter's orbit expecting to review Earth's modest contribution. As their diplomatic vessel approaches the Thunderchild, the massive warship eclipses Jupiter's Great Red Spot, a deliberate positioning that Vasquez ordered to provide scale context. Tactical intimidation. Lieutenant Commander Shinlaw murmurs beside her on the Thunderchild's bridge. Psychological warfare before they even board. Not intimidation, Vasquez corrects quietly. Calibration. They need to understand what they're working with. The committee delegation emerges from the docking bay led by Admiral Skatar, his tall, willowy frame and luminescent skin marking him as Centaurian, one of the founding species of the Concorde. Behind him follow representatives from 6 other species, each wearing the elaborate rank insignia of their respective military traditions. Welcome aboard the UDF Thunderchild. Vasquez greets them formally. Skatar studies the utilitarian bridge with poorly concealed disdain. This vessel appears functional, Commander, though lacking the ceremonial spaces appropriate for a flagship. We allocated that mass to additional shield generators instead. Vasquez replies evenly. Shall we proceed to the demonstration? The delegation follows her through corridors designed for combat efficiency, reinforced bulkheads, redundant systems visible behind transparent access panels, and crew quarters that would be considered austere by Concorde standards. Your crew lives in these compartments? Asks a Flaxian observer, gelatinous body rippling with what might be discussed. During combat deployments, Vasquez confirms, standard rotations are 3 months on, 1 month off. 3 months in such confined spaces. The Flaxian's translator conveys genuine concern. The psychological impact is managed through neural interface recreational programs and mandatory physical training, Law interjects. Human adaptability to confined spaces was a key factor in our early space exploration. They reached the Combat Information Center, a spherical chamber where holographic displays show real-time data from across the Concorde-Krevik front. Unlike the exposed bridge designs favored by Concorde vessels, this command center sits at the heart of the ship, protected by multiple armor layers. We're prepared to begin tactical demonstration Alpha, Vasquez announces. Observers should prepare for hike maneuvers. Surely you don't intend to execute combat maneuvers with diplomatic personnel aboard. Protests Skatar. The inertial compensators are calibrated for Concorde physiologies, Vasquez assures him, though you may find it uncomfortable. Before further objections can be raised, she nods to Law. Execute. The Thunderchild's engines ignite with force that would crush unprotected bodies. The massive vessel accelerates at rates that Concorde engineering considers theoretically possible, but practically unusable. Around them, Jupiter's moons blur as the ship executes a complex evasive pattern. Skatar grips a support rail, his species' natural grace abandoned as the ship pulls maneuvers that strain even the advanced compensator fields. This exceeds safe operational parameters, he gasps. For Concorde vessels, yes, Vasquez acknowledges. This is standard evasion protocol for Nemesis-class ships. Our crews train at these tolerances daily. As if on cue, a swarm of test drones launches from concealed bays on a nearby moon. A surprise element that wasn't in the briefing materials. They converge on the Thunderchild, weapons hot. Live fire exercise. Demands a Takari delegate, mandibles clicking in alarm. Controlled demonstration. Vasquez corrects, gesturing to the tactical display. Observe. The Thunderchild's point defense grid activates, thousands of hypervelocity projectiles creating a sphere of destruction around the vessel. Unlike Concorde systems that target individual threats with precision, this defense creates overlapping kill zones that nothing can penetrate. You're not targeting the drone specifically, realizes the Centaurian physicist, eyes widening. You're saturating space itself with defensive fire. Threat density exceeds individual targeting capability, Law explains. So we changed the paradigm. We don't need to hit every threat. Just ensure no threat can reach us. Several drones attempt to penetrate the defensive screen, only to disintegrate. 3 particularly nimble units execute a synchronized attack on the delegation's shuttle still docked in the Thunderchild's bay. Your own shuttle is targeted, exclaims Skatar. Yes, Vasquez replies calmly. In combat, enemies often target apparent vulnerabilities. On screen, the shuttle's shields, Concorde designed and considered top tier, collapse under the coordinated assault. The drones prepare to fire again. Enough. Orders Skitar. End this demonstration immediately. Lieutenant Kaminsky. Vasquez calls to a weapons officer. Neutralize remaining targets. A previously unnoticed weapon array emerges from the Thunderchild's hull. A compact system that Skitar doesn't recognize. It fires once, releasing not projectiles, but a wave of energy that washes over the drone swarm. All units simultaneously power down, drifting harmlessly. Ion pulse generator, Law explains. Non-destructive but effective against most electronic systems. You disabled our shuttle's defenses deliberately. Skitar realizes. To demonstrate their inadequacy. To demonstrate reality. Vasquez corrects. The Krevak don't respect Concord battle doctrines or honor codes. They target weaknesses ruthlessly. Your defenses are designed for ceremonial fleet actions against opponents who follow similar rules. The Nemesis class is designed for opponents who don't. She leads them deeper into the vessel, to a secured chamber that requires her personal biometric authorization. Inside waits the true revelation. A scale model of the entire human battle group. The Thunderchild isn't a single warship, she explains as the delegates stare in shock. It's a carrier platform for an entire battle constellation. The holographic display activates, showing smaller vessels detaching from concealed bays along the Thunderchild's hull. Destroyers, frigates, and fighter squadrons, each designed with the same ruthless functionality. Every Nemesis-class ship carries enough firepower to engage a conventional fleet, Vasquez continues. Together, they form an integrated combat system designed for a single purpose. Overwhelming force applied with tactical precision. Skitar studies the display in stunned silence before asking the question that now seems obvious. How long has your species been preparing for war, Commander Vasquez? Her answer is simple, and all the more disturbing for it. Always, Admiral. That's how we survived to reach the stars at all. The human battle group exits hyperspace at the edge of the Proxus Nebula, a brilliant cloud of cosmic gas illuminated by the radiation of a dying star. The region serves as a natural boundary between Concord territory and Krevak-controlled space, its electromagnetic properties making long-range scanning unreliable. Transition complete. All vessels reporting nominal, announces Lieutenant Rodriguez from the operations console. Stealth systems engaging. The Thunderchild's external hull shimmers as metamaterial coating activates, bending light and absorbing sensor pings. It doesn't render the massive vessel invisible, but against the nebula's background radiation, it becomes just another shadow among many. On the bridge, Vasquez reviews the tactical overlay as her neural implant processes real-time fleet diagnostics. Deploy sensor drones. Passive scanning only. Viscount Tolar, the methane-breathing aristocrat assigned as senior Concord liaison, shifts uncomfortably in his environmental suit. Commander, Concord protocol requires formal notification to regional authorities before deploying surveillance equipment in neutral space. Shenlaw, now promoted to tactical commander, doesn't look up from his station. We're not in neutral space, Viscount. The Proxus Nebula became a combat zone when the Krevak established forward bases in its southern quadrant 3 months ago. That intelligence is unconfirmed by Concord reconnaissance. Tolar objects. Because your reconnaissance vessels were detected and destroyed before they could report back. Vasquez replies matter-of-factly. Our drones use different technology. The subtle reminder of Concord military failures silences further protest. Small disc-shaped objects detach from the Thunderchild's ventral ports, their matte black surfaces absorbing even the nebula's ambient light as they accelerate away. Lieutenant Kaminsky from Weapons Control suddenly straightens. Commander, Drone 7 has detected engine signatures. 3 Krevak destroyers in pursuit formation. The main display shifts to show thermal imaging of predatory-looking vessels, their hulls adorned with trophies from previous victories. A Krevak tradition that turns their warships into macabre galleries. Target analysis. Vasquez orders. Standard Krevak Fang-class destroyers. Law reports. Modifications to forward weapon arrays suggest recent upgrades. They're pursuing a smaller vessel, civilian registry, heavy damage to propulsion systems. The image enhances to show a sleek transport ship trailing plasma from ruptured engines. Its elegant lines mark it as Elysian, one of the most ancient Concorde species. It's a hospital ship, Dr. Rise announces from the science station, voice tight with controlled anger. Transponder identifies it as the Mercy of Dawn from New Arcadia evacuation fleet. Life support failing, approximately 300 patients aboard. The Krevac will execute them all, Tolar says quietly. Hospital ships are priority targets in their doctrine. They believe treating the wounded prolongs conflicts. Vasquez doesn't hesitate. Battle stations. Prepare for immediate engagement. Alarms sound throughout the ship as crew members move with practiced efficiency to combat positions. The ship's lighting shifts to red, interfaces reconfiguring for combat operations. Commander, Tulhar's translator struggles to convey his alarm. Concorde regulations require consultation with Allied commanders before initiating hostile action in joint operations. Earth regulations require immediate response to civilian distress calls. Vasquez counters, particularly medical vessels. You might want to secure yourself, Viscount. She activates the fleet-wide command channel. All vessels, this is Vasquez. Operation Spear Thrust is now active. Phase 1 deployment. What happens next transforms the Concorde observer's understanding of human warfare forever. The Thunderchild doesn't simply accelerate toward the enemy. It changes. Segments of the massive vessel detach along predetermined seams, revealing themselves as independent combat units. What appeared to be the upper sensor array separates as a fully equipped destroyer. Launch bays open to release squadrons of fighters. Weapon platforms detach and form a defensive screen. Mother of Stars, whispers a Centaurian technician. It's disassembling itself. Not disassembling, law corrects. Deploying. The Thunderchild is designed for modular combat operations. Within minutes, the single vessel has transformed into a coordinated battle group of 27 distinct units, each with specific tactical functions. The Krevac, expecting to encounter a single large target if detected at all, now face a distributed threat coming from multiple vectors. The human neural-linked pilots accelerate their fighters beyond safety margins established by any Concorde species, pulling maneuvers that would render most sentients unconscious. Their communication chatter flows through the bridge speakers, casual, almost relaxed despite the violence they're unleashing. Talon 3, you've got a leaker on your 6. I see him. Watch this. A human fighter deliberately cuts thrust, allowing a pursuing Krevac interceptor to overtake it, then fires retro thrusters to flip orientation and destroy the enemy with a point-blank shot. Did you calculate that maneuver? Asks an astonished Flaxian observer. Calculated. The human communications officer laughs. That's Casey. She used to race skimmers through the asteroid belt for fun before joining the fleet. On the main tactical display, the Krevac destroyers attempt to maintain formation against the swarming human attack. Their doctrine, based on intimidation and overwhelming individual targets, fails against opponents who refuse to fight according to expected patterns. Target Alpha's shields failing, reports Kaminsky. Boarding team standing by. Negative on boarding. Vasquez orders. Priority is the hospital ship. Talon Squadron, establish defensive perimeter. Aegis team, prepare for rescue operations. Within 20 minutes, the engagement concludes. 2 Krevac destroyers drift as burning hulks, while the third, their command vessel, remains intact but disabled, its critical systems overloaded by targeted electromagnetic pulses. As rescue teams transfer patients from the failing hospital ship to the Thunderchild's medical bay, Vasquez approaches the disabled Krevac command vessel with a small team. Their boarding shuttle locks onto an emergency airlock, bypassing standard security measures. You're personally leading the intelligence acquisition team. Tul-R asks incredulously. Concorde command protocols specifically prohibit. This isn't a Concorde operation. Vasquez interrupts, checking the seal on her combat armor. And we need that navigational data before they can purge it. The boarding is swift and precise. Krevak resistance crumbles against humans in powered assault armor moving with coordination that suggests extensive training in microgravity combat. Vasquez herself secures the bridge, downloading critical intelligence from the enemy commander's position before the automatic deletion protocols complete. When she returns to the Thunderchild, the ship has already begun reintegrating its modular components. The Concord observers watch in silence as the vessel reforms itself, battle damage being addressed by automated repair systems. In his private quarters later, Viscount Tullar records his observations with trembling appendages. They don't just fight differently, he dictates to his secure journal. They conceptualize warfare as an art form, a discipline to be studied and perfected rather than a necessary evil. Most disturbing of all, they appear to enjoy the challenge. Helios, threshold burns, the binary star system, strategically vital with its 16 inhabited worlds and extensive mineral resources, has been under siege for 14 standard days. Half of its orbital infrastructure now drifts as debris, creating navigation hazards throughout the system. Admiral Gorthval stands on the ceremonial command platform of the Concord dreadnought Eternal Radiance. His tall, angular frame remains perfectly poised, despite the exhaustion evident in his bioluminescent skin patterns. Around him, Concord officers maintain their stations with ritualistic precision, even as tactical displays show their defensive perimeter contracting yet again. Execute Protocol Steadfast Withdrawal. Phase 3, he orders. All vessels maintain formation integrity during retrograde maneuvers. The Concord fleet responds with synchronized precision, a crescent formation that has been the standard defensive posture since the Great Harmonization 9,000 years ago. It's beautiful, mathematically perfect, and absolutely predictable. The pursuing Krevak Armada presses forward relentlessly, their ships arranged in hunting packs that target weaknesses in the Concord lines. They cared nothing for aesthetic formations or historical battle doctrines, focusing solely on kill efficiency. A junior communications officer approaches Gorthval with ceremonial deference. Admiral, long-range sensors detect hyperspace distortions at system edge. Profile matches human vessels. Gorthval's expression doesn't change. Acknowledge their arrival and instruct them to assume supporting position in accordance with Coalition protocol. Sir, the officer hesitates. They're requesting immediate tactical conference. Commander Vasquez insists on priority override. Before Gorthval can respond, the main communication array activates without authorization. Commander Vasquez's face appears on the central display, her expression grim. Admiral Gorthval, this is Commander Vasquez of the UDF Thunderchild. My battle group has analyzed your tactical situation. We're initiating immediate intervention. Gorthval's skin flashes patterns of indignation. Commander, Coalition protocols require integration of supporting forces through proper command channels. Your vessels will take position at coordinates. With respect, Admiral, Vasquez interrupts. Those protocols are getting your people killed. I've established encrypted communication with your field commanders. Human vessels are moving to engagement positions now. Around the Eternal Radiance, space ripples as 7 massive human warships materialize from hyperspace, jumps precisely calculated to position them at key tactical points throughout the system. They bypass the Concord defensive line entirely, appearing directly amid the scattered Krevak formations. This is outrageous. Gorthval's translator struggles with the emotional undertones. You've compromised our entire battle strategy. Your strategy was failing. Vasquez replies bluntly. Request permission to board for direct consultation. 20 minutes later, Vasquez stands before the assembled Concord command staff in the Eternal Radiance's strategic chamber. The holographic battlefield projection dominates the center of the room, showing the chaotic repositioning as Krevak forces react to the human arrival. Your formation is beautiful, she tells the assembled commanders while studying the display, and completely wrong for this environment. She manipulates the projection, highlighting gravitational eddies created by the binary stars. The Krevak are using these gravitational anomalies to slingshot reinforcements behind your lines. They don't respect your formation because they don't share your traditions. Senior Physics Advisor Kel Torin steps forward, his crystalline exoskeleton catching the light. Our formation was designed by the greatest military minds in Concord history, calibrated for optimal defensive coverage. In conventional space, Vasquez counters. But Helios threshold isn't conventional. Its binary stars create unique gravitational dynamics that affect weapons trajectory, sensor reliability, and hyperspace emergence points. She expands a section of the display, showing a region near the smaller star. We've identified their supply chain vulnerability here, in the Crimson Shadow Zone, where radiation interferes with their shield harmonics. Her proposal violates every principle of Concord doctrine, splitting forces, engaging without full sensor coverage, and most shocking of all, deliberately navigating through the stellar corona of the smaller star to emerge behind enemy lines. Impossible, declares Keltoran. No ship can survive passing through a star's corona. The radiation alone won't. Human ships can. Vasquez interrupts. We built heat shields using materials from our home system's star. Mercury colony miners have worked solar harvesting operations for decades. She brings up technical specifications of the Thunderchild's outer hull, a complex layering of materials specifically designed to withstand stellar radiation. We can survive a 70-second transit through the corona. That's enough to position us directly behind their command structure. Gorthval studies the projection for long moments, internal conflict evident in his skin patterns. 9,000 years of military tradition argues against this plan, but 14 days of watching his forces die following those traditions has taken its toll. The risk is unacceptable, he finally decides. I cannot authorize. A massive explosion rocks the eternal radiance as a Krevak strike force breaks through the defensive perimeter. Emergency alerts blare across all decks. Primary shield generators failing. Breaches on decks 7 through 12. Enemy boarding craft detected. Gorthval's composure finally cracks. How do they penetrate our defenses? The formation was perfect. They don't care about perfect, Vasquez states flatly. They care about winning. She opens a direct communication line to her vessels. All Nemesis units. Execute Operation Solar Dive. Authorization Vasquez actual. Before Gorthval can countermand the order, the human vessels break formation. 4 Nemesis-class ships accelerate toward the identified supply chain weakness, while the Thunderchild and 2 others execute Hyge burns directly toward the smaller star of the binary system. You'll destroy your ships and crews. Kel Torin protests. Watch and learn. Vasquez replies, her attention focused on the tactical display as the Thunderchild approaches the stellar corona, its hull beginning to glow from the intense radiation. What follows becomes legend in Concord military academies for generations to come. The Concord Central Military Academy on Axiom Prime has stood for 12 centuries as the guardian of martial tradition. Its crystalline spires and ceremonial parade grounds were designed to inspire awe rather than practicality. Now those immaculate grounds host something unprecedented. Combat trenches dug into the ornamental gardens, automated defense turrets mounted on classical statuary, and the constant sound of weapons fire from newly established training ranges. In the Academy's Grand Simulation Chamber, once used exclusively for choreographed battle reenactments, Lieutenant Commander Jackson paces before a class of stunned Concord officers. The chamber's holographic projectors display the Battle of Helios Threshold, focusing on the moment the Thunderchild emerged from the stellar corona, its hull glowing white-hot yet structurally intact. Forget everything you know about honorable engagement, Jackson barks, his voice echoing in the vaulted space. There's nothing honorable about watching your civilians die because you're too proud to adapt. A Tekeri officer raises a segmented limb. But our battle formations have been optimized over thousands of years off. Of ceremonial fleet actions against opponents who follow the same rulebook. Jackson interrupts. The Krevak don't read your rulebook. They don't care about the historical significance of your crescent formation or the cultural meaning behind your targeting protocols. He manipulates the holographic display to show the devastating effectiveness of the Thunderchild's ramming maneuver against the Krevak flagship. This isn't about aesthetics. It's about survival. Across the Academy grounds, similar scenes unfold as human instructors dismantle centuries of tactical orthodoxy. In training hangars, conquered pilots learn evasive maneuvers that prioritize survival over formation integrity. In engineering bays, technicians retrofit elegant vessels with ungainly but effective armor plating. In the primary shipyard adjacent to the Academy, Vasquez meets with Narvash, the Concorde's most celebrated ship architect. Together, they examine modified Concorde vessels incorporating lessons from human designs, armored bridges relocated from exposed positions to protected core sections, weapon systems distributed rather than concentrated in symmetrical arrays, and modular components that can separate during battle. My colleagues call these abominations. Narvash admits, running a hand over the angular armor plating that now covers the once graceful hull of a Concorde cruiser. 3 of them resigned their commissions rather than implement these changes. Vasquez studies a structural weakness that the modifications haven't fully addressed. The auxiliary power couplings are still exposed here. One well-placed shot would cause cascading system failures throughout the port quadrant. Narvash finishes, but relocating them would disrupt the harmony ratios that have defined Concorde shipbuilding since the Third Enlightenment. Which matters more, harmony ratios or crew survival? The architect's inner eyelids close momentarily. A gesture Vasquez has learned indicates deep discomfort. You ask us to abandon 15,000 years of cultural evolution. I'm asking you to evolve further, she corrects gently. Beauty can coexist with function. Their discussion is interrupted by an emergency signal. Admiral Chen's holographic form materializes before them, his expression grave. The intelligence gathered from captured Krevak databanks has been fully decrypted, he announces without preamble. It's worse than we thought. In the emergency council that follows, representatives from 17 species crowd the Concorde High Command chamber. The central holographic display shows the Krevak's master battle plan in horrifying detail, not merely an opportunistic invasion, but a meticulously planned extinction campaign targeting specific Concorde species for biological harvesting. They've been studying you for centuries, Vasquez explains as the assembled delegates murmur in shock. Cataloging genetic traits, mapping homeworld resources, identifying cultural vulnerabilities. This isn't just conquest, it's systematic extermination of species they deem evolutionary dead ends. The display shifts to show the massive Krevak armada assembling at Darkfall Nexus, a region of space where unique quantum distortions make long-range detection nearly impossible. Their fleet, now fully revealed, dwarfs previous estimates. We project they'll launch their decisive push toward Elysium within 30 standard days, Admiral Chen concludes. Their objective is the complete collapse of Concorde's central authority. The High Chancellor, his aged features grave, turns to the Concorde's senior military advisor. What is your recommended response? Admiral Skatar. Skatar activates the strategic projection, highlighting defensive positions around Elysium. We must consolidate our remaining forces to protect the capital. Establish layered defense zones, evacuation corridors for non-combat personnel, and prepare for siege operations. It's a textbook defensive strategy, following 9 millennia of Concorde doctrine perfectly. Vasquez listens silently until invited to comment. Then she steps forward and changes the display entirely, focusing not on Elysium, but on Darkfall Nexus itself. We don't wait for them to attack, she says simply. We strike first. The chamber erupts in objections. Skatar raises his voice above the din. The Nexus is surrounded by quantum disruption fields. No fleet can approach undetected, and a frontal assault would be suicide against their concentrated forces. Vasquez zooms the display to a seemingly empty region of space near the Nexus. 2 months ago, we began deploying stealth platforms throughout this sector. Micro-jumps, emission-shielded. They've been mapping the disruption fields, finding ways through. A stunned silence follows as the implications sink in. You've been planning this without Concord authorization, demands the High Chancellor. We've been planning this since we decrypted the first fragments of their battle plan, Vasquez corrects. Because unlike you, we don't react to threats. We anticipate them. As the debate rages on, a junior Takari officer approaches Vasquez privately during a recess. Is it true, he asks hesitantly, that your species once had weapons that could destroy entire planets? That you nearly eradicated yourselves? Yes, Vasquez answers simply. The officer's compound eyes study her with new understanding. Then you have already faced extinction. You know its face. We do, she confirms. That's why we'll never let it happen to you. The quantum disruption fields surrounding Darkfall Nexus ripple with energy discharges, creating a black aurora effect visible even to unaugmented eyes. Through this deadly curtain, the combined human Concord fleet emerges from hyperspace at precisely calculated coordinates, the narrow pathways mapped by months of stealthy reconnaissance. Aboard the Thunderchild's command center, the atmosphere is tense but disciplined. Combat crews stand at their stations, neural interfaces pulsing with tactical data streams. Vasquez occupies the central command position, her cybernetic eye implant glowing faintly as it processes the influx of battlefield information. Transition complete. All vessels accounted for, reports Navigation Officer Chen. Stealth systems active across the fleet, adds Lieutenant Rodriguez. Krevak detection grid remains dormant. The main tactical display reveals the devastating truth that intelligence estimates had failed to capture. The Krevak Armada isn't merely gathered. It's fully deployed in pre-invasion formation. Massive dreadnoughts form the core of the formation, surrounded by carrier groups and strike cruisers arranged in predatory patterns. Supply vessels and troop transports cluster in the protected rear echelons. Count confirms 3 times the predicted force strength. Tactical Officer Law announces grimly. 5 supercarriers identified. 8 Dreadnought-class command vessels. Fighter complement estimated at 20,000 units. Admiral Skatar's holographic image materializes instantly. Commander Vasquez, we must withdraw. This is not the force we prepared to engage. Vasquez studies the tactical display, her expression unreadable. Sensors confirm they haven't detected our full fleet yet, she observes. Only our forward elements. All the more reason to retreat while we can, insists Zakatar. No, Vasquez says quietly. All the more reason to execute Protocol Trojan Horse. She opens the fleet-wide command channel. All vessels, this is Vasquez. Initiate Trojan Horse Protocol. Phase 1 commences on my mark. Throughout the human fleet, crew members move with practiced precision. Weapon systems retract into armored housings. Power signatures shift from combat configuration to irregular patterns mimicking battle damage. Shield emitters cycle down in seemingly random sequences. We're deliberately making ourselves appear vulnerable. Law explains to the Concord liaison officers, drawing them to us. Sacrificing our vanguard, asks a horrified Centaurian observer. Not sacrificing, corrects Vasquez. Baiting. The Krevak response is immediate. Long-range sensors detect the apparently damaged human vessels, and a hunting pack of cruisers breaks formation to pursue what seems like easy prey. Behind them, gradually, larger elements of the fleet begin to shift position, drawn by the promise of quick victory. Enemy pursuit group accelerating to attack velocity. Rodriguez reports. Estimated weapons range in 47 seconds. All vessels maintain current emissions profile. Vasquez orders. Prepare for coordinated evasion on my mark. As the pursuing Krevak ships close distance, the human vessels execute a feigned retreat, taking punishing fire that overloads exterior shield layers in cascading patterns suggesting critical damage. Hull breaches on decks 30 through 35, reports damage control. atmosphere venting from secondary storage bays, seal-affected compartments, and continue emission profile. Vasquez responds calmly. The Concorde liaison officers watch in mounting horror as the human ships appear to disintegrate under enemy fire. The Thunderchild itself shudders as direct hits penetrate its outer armor layers. This isn't battle, it's slaughter, protests a Flaxian observer as emergency klaxons sound throughout the ship. Not yet, it isn't, Vasquez replies, her focus unwavering. The pursuing Krevak forces, emboldened by apparent success, accelerate deeper into the kill zone, breaking from their support structure in their eagerness to claim victory. When their formation overextends beyond the protection of their fleet's primary sensor grid, Vasquez gives the command. Execute Odysseus maneuver. Now, the seemingly crippled human vessels suddenly perform a synchronized maneuver impossible for damaged ships, a perfectly coordinated acceleration to maximum velocity followed by a hyperspace jump sequence unlike anything the Concorde has witnessed. The jumps target not retreat coordinates, but precise positions within the heart of the Krevak formation. Materialization in 3, 2, 1, announces navigation. Reality tears as the human ships reappear inside the enemy formation, surrounded by hostile vessels, but exactly where they plan to be. The Krevak, their attention focused on the fleeing vanguard, are caught completely unprepared as the human warships materialize mere kilometers from their command ships. The Thunderchild emerges directly alongside the Supreme Dreadnought, a colossal vessel festooned with the trophies of 100 conquered worlds. Before the Krevak can react, all human vessels simultaneously deploy their concealed weapon systems, targeting the communication nodes and command centers identified through weeks of surveillance. As the human ships execute their attack, the Concorde fleet, following the revised battle plan, strikes the pursuing Krevak forces from behind, catching them in a devastating crossfire. The Thunderchild's bridge becomes a storm of activity as direct hits from the surprised but rapidly responding Krevak flagship hammer its shields. A massive explosion rocks the command deck as enemy fire breaches the outer defensive layers. Support beams collapse, crushing stations and personnel in a shower of sparks and debris. Vasquez, thrown from her command chair, lies pinned beneath a fallen structural support, her left side crushed. Emergency medical teams rush to stabilize her, but she waves them away, accessing ship systems directly through her neural implants. Status report. She demands through gritted teeth as a medic injects emergency stimulants to keep her conscious. Law, bleeding from a head wound, checks his tactical display. Target Alpha identified. Krevak Supreme Dreadnought confirmed. Biosigns consistent with war hierarchy presence. Execute final phase. Vasquez orders, her voice steady despite the pain. Throughout the chaotic battle, specialized human technical teams have been analyzing Krevak shield frequencies in real time, searching for harmonic vulnerabilities. The data streams to all human vessels simultaneously, allowing them to reconfigure their weapons to a specific resonance frequency, exploiting a fundamental flaw in Krevak shield design. It's a vulnerability no species would find unless they had spent millennia fighting against technologically superior opponents, learning to identify and exploit the smallest weaknesses. The Grand Hall of Celestial Harmony on Elysium has stood for 12,000 years, its crystalline walls designed to capture and amplify the light of 7 different suns throughout the day. Today, those walls reflect a kaleidoscope of colors onto an unprecedented gathering. Representatives from every Concorde world, many still bearing visible scars of Krevak occupation, fill the tiered seating that rises in elegant spirals toward the vaulted ceiling. At the center, on the speaker's dais traditionally reserved for only the most ancient species, stands a single human. Commander Elena Vasquez appears almost diminished compared to the towering alien dignitaries surrounding her. Her dress uniform hangs loosely on a frame still recovering from extensive reconstructive procedures. The left side of her face bears the faint tracery of regeneration grafts, and where her left arm once was, a temporary prosthetic gleams dully. Medical nanites visibly circulate beneath her skin, their blue luminescence a testament to healing still in progress. The High Chancellor approaches, his ancient form supported by a gravity field that gives him the appearance of floating. In his hands rests the Circlet of Concordance, a relic of living metal never before offered to a species with less than 5 centuries of interstellar civilization. The Battle of Darkfall Nexus has altered the course of galactic history, he intones, his voice amplified by the chamber's perfect acoustics. The Krevak Dominion, which threatened our existence for generations, surrendered unconditionally following the capture of their war hierarch by human boarding parties. The hull's displays activate, showing footage from the final moments of the battle. The Thunderchild, despite catastrophic damage to 60% of its systems, executing a precision maneuver that placed it directly alongside the Krevak flagship. The images transition to helmet cameras from the Marine boarding teams, their powered assault armor enabling them to breach the enemy vessel despite withering defensive fire. The statistical analysis is irrefutable, continues the Chancellor. Though human vessels comprised less than 12% of our combined fleet, they accounted for 63% of enemy ships neutralized. Their casualties were... He pauses, mandibles clicking in what humans now recognize as emotional distress. 97%. Absolute silence falls. Every species present understands the significance. Nearly every human who participated in the final battle died in the effort. Before bestowing this unprecedented honor, the Chancellor concludes, the Council requests that Commander Vasquez address the Assembly on behalf of humanity. Vasquez approaches the ancient speaking stone slowly, each step visibly painful despite advanced medical treatments. When she speaks, her voice is quiet yet carries to every corner of the vast chamber. The Concord has existed for 12 millennia. She begins. In that time, you've created works of art, philosophy, and science that will endure for eternity. You've built a civilization of unparalleled beauty and harmony. She pauses, surveying the assembled dignitaries. But beauty without strength cannot endure. Harmony without protection is merely temporary. Murmurs ripple through the translators as she continues. Humanity's history is different from yours. Where you found consensus, we found conflict. Where you built monuments, we built fortifications. You reached for the stars in search of knowledge. We reached for them in search of room to breathe. Holographic images appear around her, Earth's history from ancient battles to space colonization. For most of our existence, humans fought primarily against ourselves, she acknowledges. But that crucible forged something unique, an understanding that survival sometimes requires terrible sacrifice. The images shift to show the human vessels that stood against the Krevak fleet, many now existing only as debris fields. We don't excel at warfare because we love it, she continues, her voice strengthening. We excel because we've spent millennia learning its cost. We know the price of victory and the higher price of defeat. She gestures toward the Krevak war hierarch, now wearing ceremonial restraints at the edge of the platform. The massive reptilian scales have dulled in captivity, but his eyes remain defiant. Your species believed conquest was your birthright. She addresses him directly. You saw the Concord's beauty as weakness to be exploited. What you fail to understand is that the most dangerous opponent isn't the one who has never known defeat. It's the one who has been defeated countless times and still refuses to submit. The war hierarch's translator conveys his grudging response. Your species fights like the universe itself is at stake in every battle. For us, it always has been. Vasquez answers simply. Turning back to the assembly, she continues, humanity doesn't ask to join the Concord because we seek glory or power. We ask to join because we recognize what you've built as worth protecting. Her gaze sweeps the chamber. And protection. Standing between what matters and whatever threatens it. That's what humans do best. As the circlet is placed upon her brow, a new image appears in the holographic display. The skeletal framework of a vessel under construction, far larger than any Nemesis-class ship. The UDF Guardian, Vasquez explains, noting the questioning looks. The first of a new class designed jointly by human and Concord engineers. Not built for war, but for defense. Not designed to conquer, but to preserve. The image expands to show unique elements, Concord aesthetic principles blended with human pragmatic design, creating something neither civilization could have produced alone. There will always be threats in this galaxy, she concludes, but from today forward, they will face something unprecedented. The scientific brilliance and cultural harmony of the Concord, protected by the unyielding determination of humanity. The Chancellor steps forward, his ancient eyes meeting Vasquez. For millennia, the Concord believed that civilization advanced by moving away from conflict toward harmony. You have shown us a different truth, that sometimes harmony must be defended with terrible resolve. He gestures toward the stars visible through the crystal ceiling. We built wonders. Now you will help us ensure they endure. In the silence that follows, a single Takari child, orphaned during a Krevik invasion of her world, approaches Vasquez. The small insectoid holds up a simple drawing showing stylized humans standing between her people and monsters. Vasquez kneels, despite the pain it causes, to accept the offering. The galaxy has beauty worth protecting. She tells the child, "Thank you for reminding us why we fight." As she rises, her gaze meets the war hero's one final time. "Remember this moment," she tells him quietly, "so your people never again mistake humanity's peaceful exploration for weakness. We don't seek war." Her voice drops to a whisper that only he can hear. But we've mastered it nonetheless. The message requires no translation.